Welcome again, and at this time, please join me in also welcoming our lovely moderator, Jenelle Riley.
Oh, that's a long walk down here. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here today. As the nice woman told you, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm the Associate Features Editor at Variety. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to the SAG, it's called SAG Foundation event with guest actors, but this is really what Jenelle watches. Could be the subtitle of this show. So at this time, please join me in welcoming some very familiar faces I'm sure you'll recognize. Let's start with an actress recently seen in The Devil's Due. She plays the very sexy, very dangerous undercover spy Lucia on The Americans. Please welcome Aimee Carrero. For you theater people, you might recognize this actress from musicals like Legally Blonde and Kinky Boots. She plays the prostitute Betty on Masters of Sex. This is a guest role that was recently promoted to a series regular for season 2. Please welcome Annaleigh Ashford. I don't even know where to begin. We have a Tony-nominated actor. He's appeared in countless films, TV, and stage roles. Just as an example of his range, 2 of my favorite movies I don't think could be more different. The Brother from Another Planet and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Actually, they're both sci-fi. I guess maybe they're not that different. He is currently appearing on Scandal, which is a show full of very bad people, and he might just be the worst, as Rowan Pope. Please welcome Joe Morton. I'm so thrilled we have an actress here. You might recognize her as Zach Galifianakis' wife in The Campaign. Her fantastic turn on Louie this season garnered her raves from everything from Entertainment Weekly to the New York Times. Please welcome Sarah Baker. We have a very accomplished stage and screen actor. He has the unique distinction of playing 2 of the most vile characters on TV last year, with turns both on Law & Order, SVU, and of course as George Mendez, aka Pornstache, on Orange is the New Black. Please welcome Pablo Schreiber. I know, I can hear you all. You're all saying he's so tall and handsome. And not creepy at all.
Well, a little bit.
Finally, an actress who won an Emmy Award just last year for her turn as attorney Elizabeth Tascione on The Good Wife. If there is a hit drama show on the air, odds are she's been on it in the last year, with recent memorable arcs on The Following, True Blood, and Person of Interest. Please welcome Carrie Preston. Thank you all so much for being here, and congratulations on really a great year. Because this is a SAG audience, I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? Yeah, sure.
Well, I got my SAG card in 2009 doing a little movie called Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel. So yeah, it was my first audition out here, actually, and I'd been auditioning in Miami for a while, and I don't look like Sofia Vergara, so that's what people go to Miami to do, is cast Sofia Vergara, and I'm not her, so I had no luck in Miami, and then I came out here, and that was my first audition and my first job.
And who did you play? Because I know I've seen this movie.
I played a person. I had a crush on Theodore, and I had like maybe 3 lines, and Betty Thomas, who directed it, was really wonderful, and I remember she couldn't remember anybody's name, but she remembered mine, and she called everybody puppy, and so she'd go around the room like after a take and say, "You were normal, you were human, you were fine, puppy." Aimee, do it again. That was awful. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, that was magic. Also made me think of Alvin, Simon, Theodore. Okay, anyways, I got my SAG card playing a label queen, that was my name, in Sex and the City, the first movie. And we had to shoot it like in the middle of the night because at a Starbucks in Union Square because like the paparazzi was crazy because it was Sex and the City, the movie. And I was broke and had to put my SAG card on a credit card, and it took me a long time to pay it off. I got it!
It's been a long time. It was a film called Between the Lines. It was directed by the same woman who did Hester Street. It was a kind of about a newspaper very much like the Village Voice in New York City. It starred everybody from Stephen Collins and, oh, see, I knew I shouldn't have started that, but a list of actors that you've all seen who've all sort of done well in the meantime, and that's how it started.
Hi. I got my actual SAG card from an episode of The Office I did, but I had been eligible for a little while, and I had the nightmare thing of I had auditioned like the previous week, and then I thought I didn't get it, and then like it because it was in its like 5th season or something, so they weren't super worried about getting their actors there on time or anything, so they called at like 7 o'clock the night before and like, oh yeah, she got it, but a different part, and she starts tomorrow. And they assumed, I guess, that I was already in SAG, but I had done all this after work because I'd done a lot of cable stuff, and that at the time was a lot of after stuff. So I had to have like a panic attack the next day when the like second AD was like, oh yeah, well, we might have to recast you if it doesn't come through in time. And I was like, but I've auditioned so many times and I finally got on. But it, and then the hair and makeup people, because they always help you, they were like, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. And it did. And it worked out. Yeah. I got my card.
I got my SAG card from a modern classic that I know as Bubble Boy, and you probably know it as that too, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. I played Todd, the leader of the Bright and Shiny People, which was a cult that was led by Fabio.
As Fabio, or was it Fabio playing a character, or was he himself?
I mean, Fabio doesn't really play characters. Fabio does what Fabio does. He shows up and says his lines, you know. So that's how I got my SAG card.
I would love to learn from Fabio on a set.
There's a lot to learn. It was actually shortly after his terrible roller coaster accident. It was just a mere months after he had been hit in the face with a bird. So he was. This is not funny, guys. This is real life stuff. This is drama, not comedy. Okay.
Did the bird get in his hair? I got my SAG card doing a pilot actually for CBS called Cuddy Whitman. I was playing Deputy Sheriff Molly Ann Sykes. And it was starring James Remar, and it didn't get picked up, but it was really a great, fun experience because I'd only done theater up until then, and yeah, it was the first time I ever shot a gun, and it was fun. Yeah.
Was it a recurring role? Supposed to be a recurring role on the show?
It was like the lead guest for the pilot, so I don't know if they would, were gonna keep me on after that, but it was a fairly big role for, my first job in, and so I was really nervous because I didn't really know what I was doing, other than having done theater. So, but sadly, it didn't get picked up.
Don't they always tell guest actors like, "Hey, we're thinking of having you back"? How often do they meet?
Potentially recurring.
Potentially recurring. That's what it is.
How often does that actually pan out? Oh, yeah.
Well, it did for me, which is like crazy. But, it happens so often that you don't, so you never expect it. I mean, I still cannot believe that I'm actually, I'm driving around this car that's really funny right now. It's a 1988 Volvo, and I roll down the windows because there's no air conditioner, and I'm rocking it in Los Angeles in a Volvo, and can't believe it. I'm so grateful. This is just we shot the pilot 2.5 years ago. I read the script. There were 2 scenes, and I actually went in for a completely different role. And I was getting on the train. They called and said, "Are you on the train yet?" And I said, "I'm talking to you, so I'm not on the train yet." They said, "Come back and audition for the hooker." So I went back up, and I got it in a cold read, and they just kept writing me back in. And then I wasn't even on the rest of the season, and I thought that there was no way that I could ever come back. But if you don't die, there's always a way. So I can't believe it.
I would point out on Joe's show, even if you do die, there's still a way.
There's always a way. I mean, yes. I mean, for me, it was different. They actually, when they offered the role, the big secret was that I was going to have the last, or Carrie and I would have the last 2 lines of the script at the end of season 2, which was, "Hello, Dad." Right. So I knew that I was going to be Carrie's father. I didn't know how far after that it was going to go. And then season 3, they just kept writing, and I'm, as she said, still alive.
I just heard someone gasp when you said you're Carrie's dad. Did we just spoil something for someone? You were a season behind.
Spoiler alert.
And I mean, did they tell you how much you would be doing on the 3rd season? Was it a surprise to you?
Complete surprise. I had no idea. I mean, the way Shonda works is she doesn't tell anybody anything. I mean, the fact that I knew that I was going to be Carrie's dad in the show was the secret. Carrie didn't even know. No one in the cast knew. I was the only one who knew that was going to happen. And then once season 3 began, I was pleasantly surprised with the monologue and thought, oh, this is great. And then surprised again and again and again with all those monologues, which was terrific. But she doesn't ever tell us from episode to episode what's going to happen. So we don't know until we sit down at a table read what's going to happen. So everyone is on pins and needles. Josh Molina always goes through the back, the last page of the script to see if he's going to die. As a matter of fact, at the end of season 2, when they put the scripts on the table, he went to the end of the script and it looked like he was dead. It was a joke.
I go through the script immediately to make sure I don't have to have sex and that I didn't die.
Which one scares you more?
Well, I want to have a job, so I don't want to die.
And for the rest of you, can you tell us about booking these roles? If it was an offer or an audition situation?
I've never been offered anything in my life.
Here, have a water.
Never. Maybe soon. No. Well, this was actually The Americans is shot in New York, and I was at an audition for something else, and it was like, why would there be an audition at 8 p.m.? I don't know, but it was late, and I was like in the valley, and I get a text or an email, like breakdown, and it's 11 pages, and I had to translate the scenes to Spanish. And it was like, and they were like, and it has to be in at 6 a.m. LA time, for New York. And I was like, this will never happen. Who can I get to put me on tape? And so my friend, who just happens to be a Tony Award nominee and Yale graduate, I begged, I was like, please help me put this on tape. So by the time we were done, it was like 2 a.m. And I thought, well, I'm never gonna get this. And I was going to Palm Springs with some friends the next day. And so I drove to Palm Springs, and as soon as I got there, they're like, hey, can you come back to do a Skype callback? And I'm like, is that even a thing? And it is. So I drove back, and it was like new sides too. They'd written like a new, and it was a sex scene. And you guys will know, I'm sure you've been out on a lot of auditions where it's a sex scene for an audition. That's awful. There's nobody there. It's like a person who is like reading the phone book to you, and you're like, yes, I love this. This is so hot. It's just weird. And so I walked into the room, and it was at Universal, and there were all these Oscars, and I'm like, where am I? And it said, no, what did it say? Amblin. I had no idea what that was. And I started reading the Oscars, and I'm like, well, this is gonna be real fun. And the woman who was running the audition, she said, and you're in luck because the co-chairman of Amblin Television is gonna sit in on your callback. And I'm just thinking, how am I gonna remember the line, I wanna rub my tetas all over the congressman's desk? That's all I'm thinking. And so the guy comes in and totally stone-faced, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do this. And I did it, and he had no reaction. I thought, well, I'll never work again. I wanna die. But I went home, and I got the job, and I got a call that I got the job. So there it is.
They made you come into the office to do a Skype call? Because isn't the whole point of Skype? You can do it from anywhere?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
No, yeah, they wanted, because I guess the co-chairman of Amblin Television wanted to be there. I don't know, and wanted to intimidate me with his Oscars. So, but yeah, I mean, and I also, but they were very nice. They wanted me to get the job. Like, I had a great conversation with the creators of the show, and they gave me like a whole rundown. They told me what was going to happen to the character once, what happens. So they were really wonderful. They wanted me, they were helping me as much as they could. Yeah.
And Sarah, from what I understand, Sarah, didn't you have to do your monologue in the audition? It's like 9 pages?
Yes. Yeah, no, I just got a regular old email, but it was for Louie, which I knew cast out of New York. And I happened to be obsessed with that show, so I was like, oh, I'll do whatever it is. They said, come 15 minutes early. He's, protective of his material, and so they wouldn't send me any sides. And then they called back, and they were like, actually, come like a half an hour early, because it's like 9 pages of sides. And I was like, oh, cold read? Cool. So I did. I just got there early, and luckily it was Felicia Fasano, casting director, who's amazing, and they were like, go sit in my office. Like, they hooked all of the women up that came in for it and let us take our time, and Louie wasn't there, which is good because it was a little less intimidating, but it was just Felicia and her assistant and Pamela Adlon, who works on the show, who's amazing and is on the show. And I had to do that last monologue. I don't remember if I had to do any other pieces of it, but mostly it was just that last monologue. And Pamela was really nice. I think she's just a nice person, but she did make me feel like, we've already looked at some of your material and we really want to get you this part. And so it was just a taped thing that then Louie had to watch. And then, I got the part.
And when you actually did that scene, when you actually shot it, I've heard that, I don't know how much different it was from the initial audition, but I hear it can be really hard to do a scene that you did in an audition because you don't know if you should do something different. You don't know if they want to see the exact same thing. Oh,
that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I always figure whatever got you the part is what they want you to do. But certainly I also assume that they will tell you if you're not doing what they want you to do. But yeah, shooting it, I don't think it had changed much. And a lot of people, for some reason, think it might have been improvised, but it was completely not improvised. There were other parts of the episode that were improvised, but that last long scene was completely 100% scripted by Louis C.K.
Did you improvise a scene with Ed Burns? Because he's randomly in the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you're serving him, and it's never addressed.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know why they didn't use that number, that tall drink of water. But yeah, there was basically a little scripted scene where I say holy shit, oh my God, you're Ed Burns. I love you. And he's like, hey, I love you too, and pulls me onto his lap, and he's flirting with me. And I think it echoes back to some of the things talked about in the final monologue. But then before that happens, and Louie's supposed to be watching this interaction happen. And so before that, it was just supposed to be an improvised thing where I'm just taking their drink order. And and so there was nothing there. He was like, just, have fun with them, be loose with them. And so I was just, that was the first scene I shot. I was like, okay, well, let me just be, a normal waitress. I was trying to be somewhat entertaining, but it was very intimidating because I'm an actor. I'm not a stand-up. I'm not a joke writer. I improvise, but to try and be funny in front of Louis C.K., as dumb as it sounds on his funny show, obviously he wanted me to be funny, but it felt very intimidating to put myself out there to try to be funny. So I was just kind of a normal waitress. And it was fine, whatever, did the whole scene, and Ed had all this, material, whatever, and he was great. And then they turned around just to get Louie's reaction. He didn't have any dialogue, he was just watching. But he said, just do something fun for me. And I thought, oh, okay, he wants, me to have some fun with it, so he'll have he can have a spontaneous reaction. So I started improvising all this kind of filthy stuff, if you saw that, I won't repeat it. It's gross, but it's just, it was all this kind of sexual, goofy stuff, but in a totally joking way. And then after that take, he was like, God damn it. And I was like, I don't know. I like red face. He was like, now I have to turn the camera around on you again. And I was like, what? And he was like, why didn't you do that when we were doing your scene? I was like, oh, I thought I was just being stupid. I didn't know you wanted me to be stupid. Oh, okay. And luckily it's like shooting an indie film, shooting that show. It's such a small crew and they just turned the camera around. It wasn't a big deal. But luckily that was my first scene. So then I sort of realized like, okay, just pretend like you're doing one for Louie every time and have fun with it.
And Pablo, I think that in Orange is the New Black, it was an offer, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, both of the Law and Order SVU and the Orange is the New Black were both offers from prior relationships, which was really nice. Warren Light is the showrunner on Law and Order SVU, and he had written Lights Out, which is a show that I did one season of for FX. And so he created that character for me, the Law and Order character.
Wait, is that flattering? Because
Yeah. No, it's not. So I saw him at a Knicks game, and he saw me in the aisle, and he's like, "Oh man, it's been so long. I'm working on this thing. You should come do it." And I had no idea what it was. And then a month later, I got a call about it, and so I came and did it. And it was one of those things that just there was 2 episodes. It was the season finale and the season premiere, and that was supposed to be it. And then I guess they got really good ratings on that because of the relationship between Mariska and I and her being a victim now, which has never happened in that show. And so then they brought me back to do the courtroom episode, and then they brought me back to do Reappearance when I break out of jail. Like literally they would have continued to bring me back on that show for as long as they could have, but I said we have to kill that guy off eventually.
That was you.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Really?
you can only go to the well with that kind of thing so often, you know. I mean, it's
Wait, so an actor wanted to be killed off on a show?
Oh yeah. I actually wouldn't have done the last. The last one I did was just I would have ended it with the courtroom if it was up to me, because it was a massive episode, and I would have left it at that, but they wanted to do it again, so we did it. And the Orange is the New Black, I had done Weeds with Genji Cohen, who is the showrunner there, and my agents put me up for Jason Biggs' role, which is Larry, the husband of Piper, and Genji said, "Oh, that doesn't really work. I don't see that." I was like, "Yeah, well, me neither." And and then I had a friend who was on the writing staff who was an actor with me at Carnegie Mellon University, and she then somewhere in the 10 years since we'd been out of school had switched over to writing, and she was on the writing staff, and she told me, "Hey, you should look at this character called Porn Stash. We're writing a lot of really good stuff for him as the season goes on." And so I said, "Okay." I read the pilot. It was one scene. I was like, really? You're suggesting me for a one-scene role? I mean, I know we're friends from school, but that's kind of rude. But no, it turned out that they were indeed creating a bunch of stuff, and so my inside intel paid off.
I mean, was it a situation where you just asked Genji if you could play that part?
Yeah, then so my agents went back to them and said, "Well, what about Porn Stash?" And she was like, "Yeah, great idea. Come in and try on some mustaches." We did. They found one that worked, and then we put it on tape.
What is the process of trying on mustaches? I mean, is it, this one's too bushy, this one's too Hitler-esque?
Yeah, pretty much. Too bushy was what it was. And actually, they settled on one, and they thought it was right. I wanted a handlebar thing, but I guess because it was Porn Stash, it had to be like a 70s porn stash. So we did that. That was obvious. And then the one that we found that worked really well, they thought it was just when we finally put it on camera in the first episode, it looked a little bit like a walrus. It was just like really thick and bushy, and so they were looking at that. And if you look at the episodes, in the first episode, it's just like really big mustache, and it gets thinner and smaller as the season goes on. By episode 3, we had found the perfect mustache, but the haircut for me was even more important than the mustache. I brought in a picture of Dolph Lundgren in Rocky IV. And I said, "You give me this haircut." And so we did the high and tight, and that was that.
And that's your real hair?
Oh, yeah. Can't fake that.
I'm trying to imagine an alternate universe where you're Larry and Jason Biggs is Porn Stash.
Yeah. Don't go too far with that one.
And Carrie, I guess specifically, if we could talk about The Good Wife.
Yes, The Good Wife was a gift. It was an offer. And Robert and Michelle King, they had seen this movie I did called Duplicity, where I have, I have a really wonderful sort of 3-scene role in that movie, and it was, had a really funny, kind of vulnerable, sort of quirky take, and they thought, I feel like, what she did there, she might be able to bring something interesting to this role of Elsbeth Tassioni, who was called Elsbeth Mann at first, and that didn't clear legal, and then it was Elsbeth Torsiglieri while we were on set shooting, because I kept having to say, I'm Elsbeth Mann, and they were saying, no, now you're Elsbeth Torsiglieri. Okay, I'm Elsbeth Spaghetti. I mean, I couldn't remember the name of this, and then they landed on Tassioni. I was like, okay, so Italian? Okay, fine, whatever. But they had, told me, well, it's going to be a possible recurring. And so, and that show, is known for its awesome guest roles, So I just thought, God, this is such a brilliant role. I hope I don't mess it up. I hope I could just go in there and give them, something to make them want to bring me back, because it's such a great part. So I did 2 episodes at the end of their first season, and then I didn't hear anything for a whole season, and I was like, oh no. And I went through this whole mourning process of and then the anger process. I don't need that. I'm on True Blood. I don't need their stupid show. So I did that whole thing. But meanwhile, I was heartbroken. And then out of nowhere, they called in season 3 and said, we've got this 4-episode arc, and that was when I really felt like that we really found the rhythm of the woman, because she don't work like everybody else, So, and then, they've been bringing me back since. So, it's been a real great, and I won an Emmy. So it was like an amazing moment, who knew?
I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but your husband started out by winning a guest actor
Yes,
Emmy.
see, in my house, when in the relationship I'm in, when you do a guest spot, you win an Emmy. So I was like, oh God, because he did The Practice, and it was the first TV show he had ever done, and he won an Emmy. And so it's very hard not to compare yourself, But luckily, we now have his and hers. So.
Where do you keep them? I'm curious.
They're next to each other. Well, he has another one. He's got a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, we keep them side by side on a shelf. Yeah, just right next to each other.
I'm curious. Obviously, in this case, all these roles worked out for you, but we do hear those horrible audition stories from every actor. Would you be willing to share with us your worst audition? Unless they've all been perfect.
There's so many.
I know, there are so many.
I remember it was 20 years ago or something like that. My son had just been born, and I had an audition the following morning, and I'd been in the hospital with my wife the entire night, and I was the first one up for the audition. So I came in bleary-eyed, couldn't put 2 words together. I thought, this is just stupid. Why am I here? And I got the role.
Would you be willing to say what it was, or?
It was a TV movie. I don't even remember the name of it. It doesn't much matter. Because as I said, I walked in, I had no idea what I was saying, what I was doing. All I could think of was my wife at the time, and my son had been born. I just wanted to get back to the hospital, and I walked out, and I thought, and then I got a call saying, well, you have to, get on a plane 2 days from now and go to the role. And that was it, and I did it and came back and still don't remember what it was. So.
What if they were like, do exactly what you did at the audition?
That would have been easy, because I was completely unconscious for the entire thing.
I have a similar one that's of that ilk, which my worst audition turned into my best audition, and it was actually my first audition. I had just graduated from Carnegie, and I'd done the Actors Showcase deal. And out of the Actors Showcase, Jordan Thaler, who was the casting director of the Public Theater in New York, had called me in to audition for the non-equity ensemble of the Shakespeare Festival in Central Park. And so I came in, and in Carnegie at acting school, we had learned these different monologues, and they were, you have a dramatic and a comedic monologue. and you learn them, you get them by rote. And so they wanted a monologue. So instead of doing the one that I had learned in school at the last minute, I'm like, nah, it's not really that fun for me. I want to do a new one. And so the night before, I memorized Mercutio, the wisp, whatever. And Queen Mab has been with you. And I memorized that, and I came in, and I had a very high opinion of myself. I can do this overnight and have fun. And I came in, and I started. It's my first audition as a professional actor. And I got about a line in, and I just completely forgot. Completely went up. I was like, okay, no, stop. Let's start again. I can do it. Smile, keep a smile on. Went back, started again, and same place. Went up again, second time. Jordan Thaler, to his credit, this is like one of the great sort of stories of my life, is that he got up, he said, hey, no problem, don't worry about it, no big deal. Would it help you if you had a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare in front of you to read from? It's like, yeah, that would help. That would help. I think I could do it then. So he left the audition room, and Heidi Griffiths, who's his partner, is sitting there making small talk with me while he walks 2 floors up to his office, gets the complete works, brings it back, gives it to me, and I read Queen Mab from Mercutio for my audition and left, and I was like, wow, okay, I just completely blew my acting career. That's that. And I got a call 2 days later, and I was hired for the part. To be a spear carrier number 3 non-equity ensemble in Shakespeare Park. So
I actually, every major theater job that I've had, I thought that I sucked so bad that I literally every single one of them walked out, called my mom, cried hard. Especially Legally Blonde. I auditioned once for Legally Blonde, which for a musical is very, very unusual because there's so many things you have to do in a musical. And I auditioned once, and I walked outside, and I literally called my mom and cried and said, I blew it. And I thought I could do it, and I blew it, and I sounded so terrible. I always think I sound terrible. And then they called that afternoon and said, you got it. And then from then on in my future, I continually think that I'm terrible when I get the job. So now I'm in a place where if I think I sucked really bad, there's a possibility I may get the job. And if I think it went really well, then it didn't go well. So I don't know what that means for me as an actress, but it just means that I'm in another land during auditions, like a land that nobody else should go to because it's a sad, dark place.
When I was, that movie I was just talking about, Duplicity, when I got the audition for that, it was, a great part, 3 scenes. And one of the scenes is basically a monologue where my character is just weeping uncontrollably, right? So before I even went in, I was preparing for it. I get a call from my agents, and we have a note for you. I was like, a note? I haven't even gone in yet. And they said, well, the casting is saying that you need to actually really cry. And I was like, okay, that's what I was planning on doing, but, thanks for that note. So no pressure there, right? So then I show up, and there's, several women. We're all the same type, and we're all sitting there, sort of slightly terrified. And then the casting assistant comes out and says, did you get the note? And I was like, you mean the cry on cue note? Got it. Yes, ready to go. So then I go in and I sit down, and it's just the director and casting director and myself. And, the director's as close as Pablo is to me right now. And he's, looking at me, and he's like, take as much time as you need, Carrie. I was like, oh my God. So I'm like, what do you do? You're sitting there trying to prepare. So I do the scene, cry, great, okay, feeling good. And then he was like, okay, that was great. That was really good. That was really good. And then he talked to me a little bit about if you were to do this scene, on the day, what would you need? And I was like, wow, what a cool question. I'm totally going to get this part. And I said, I guess I would need my coverage first, that because I just I can do this, but not for 14 hours straight. And so we had this great conversation, and I left, and I was like, I just wrote this movie, And I get home, and my manager calls and says, I've got this weird note for you. And I was like, do they want me to cry more? And he's like, yes, they want you to cry more. And they want you to come in and wear mascara that runs. I was like, what? So I was like, all right, okay, I can do this. And so the day before the audition, I was actually working on another movie, and they were like, "We need you to come in. They need you to come in tomorrow, while you're shooting this other thing. So you'll leave during lunch break." And this was like a 1930s thing, and I was like dressed in this 1930s, and I was like, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm working. I'm not gonna leave another job to go and put mascara on and cry for them. I'm going to, I will. Can I just go in and just go on tape?" And just show them then. And I was like the best moment of sort of taking power of taking control of your own power and not giving your power to these people, because I was not gonna do a good job. If I'm running on the lunch break in a wig, with like wrong makeup and doing this thing, it was not gonna work for anybody. So luckily they accommodated me and they let me go in and go on tape. And, so I went in, it was me and the little assistant, and I put the mascara on, and I cried and ran and stuff, and then I ended up getting the job. So then it was 2 months before I shot that scene. So you can imagine the pressure of now I have to actually, after all of this, the most important thing, which is the actual shooting of it. But luckily it was with Julia Roberts, and she was just great. She gave, just gave me a lot of attitude and made me feel very scared, and for the effect of making me be in the moment so I could cry. But yeah, that was a pretty rough one.
Well, pretty rough, except you get to have sex with Clive Owen on a copy.
Well, yeah, I did get to kiss Clive Owen. Yeah, that was delicious. So.
I think my worst audition did not turn into a job, which I know is the pattern on this panel. But I was doing a play in New York a couple years ago, and this somebody from MTC came to see the show at Manhattan Theater Club, which is a very classy place, right? And so I thought, I was like on a kids show on Cartoon Network, thought, oh my gosh, I'm doing this play with like 2 Yale grads and a Tony-nominated actress, and there's me from Cartoon Network, awesome. And I got a call for this audition for Measure for Measure that they were doing. And I was like, well, I've never done Shakespeare professionally, or even really taken a class. I majored in international relations in college, so I had no Shakespeare background. And I thought, well, I have like 4 days to know 24 pages and do it in, I had no idea. I was like, I got this. And then my friend who was in the play, she's like, no, you don't. Here, I'll help you. And so I went in and I went into the little lobby, and the Nancy Piccioni, which is the casting director for MTC, comes out and she goes, so the director's ready to see you. I was like, what? This is a director's session? Oh my gosh, this is so nerve-wracking. So I go in, and he wants to do the scenes in reverse order. And I'm like, well, no, because here's the thing, I know. So I said that. I was like, no, I think we'll do it the other way. And he didn't love that. So I did it, and then he goes to me after the first scene, he goes, I can tell you've worked very hard on this. Which is like the worst thing you ever want to hear. And so I did not get it. That's it. I thought I did a good job, but I didn't know after trying to learn all this stuff, and it's like a new language, and then having to do it in the pentameter, I was like, fuck the pentameter. I'm just gonna play my damn objectives. It was too much.
Have you done Shakespeare?
I've never done Shakespeare. To this day. I actually applied for this program they have in England to do like a 12-week Shakespeare intensive, but luckily I got a job and I couldn't do it. So it's not Shakespeare, but it's a job. So.
I don't really have any super fun or entertaining stories. I think for me the worst auditions are the ones where, for whatever reason, you just sense that either they've somehow already cast the part, or they're not interested in you for the part, or something is happening that you are not privy to, and you know that they're like just over it. And in those moments, you're just like, can we just stop? Can you just save us all the humiliation, the time? Let's just let me leave. Or on the same note, sometimes when you know you've screwed it up. I did have one audition not that long ago, sadly, like a year ago, where it was like a multicam, which is not super my area that I've done a lot of work in. And it was just very wordy and very precise. And sometimes especially I do mostly comedy, if you can't find your own rhythm with something, it can be very difficult to remember, and it can be very difficult to take on somebody else's rhythm that feels peculiar to you. So basically, I just kept going up, and it was a taped audition. It was, the producers were in another city. So I got to this one part, and I was like, I'm sorry, can I just start again? She's like, yeah, of course. Got to the same part. Okay, yeah, sorry, same one. Sorry, let me start again. 4 times. And the 4th time, I was like, inwardly, I was like, okay, just like so many tears flowing. Not really, but I wanted to cry, and I wanted to leave really badly. And then the worst part is, too, then when the next time you get an audition for that casting director, you're like, well, hope it doesn't happen again. And I do feel like the next time I went in for that casting director, I try not to be real charming or chatty or anything, because I just feel like I'm not the type of person that can pull it off. I just had to be like, hi, nice to see you, and start doing the thing. But instead I was like trying to make a joke about something that was going on, and then I was like, cool, we're doing this again. Okay, we're gonna ruin this again. Great. Yeah, I'll get her one day, guys, don't worry.
I do want to take some audience questions. We have, and again, I apologize if I butcher anyone's name, Mary Newsom. Oh, great. Well, this is a question for Pablo, but I actually want to open this up to Joe and Aimee. You also play what could be perceived as villains. Is it difficult to find a redeeming quality? Well, this was specifically for William Lewis on SVU in order to play him so intensely.
Yeah, it is difficult to find a redeeming quality in William Lewis. Not so much for Porn Stash, because I think there's humor involved in that one, and so it lightens it up, and he's easy to find redeeming qualities in, because I think his insecurities are so obvious, and he just wants to be loved, and that's quite easy to find. William Lewis obviously is a sociopath, and is probably the worst human being ever invented. So redeeming qualities are not easy to come by. So for me to focus on playing that role, it was really just about, with that character, he has to be really charming. He has to earn people's trust immediately, and then do horrible things to them, obviously. So as an actor, in that situation, you kind of let his actions speak for themselves. The actions are the horror part in that. What he does is what makes him so scary, and that's all kind of reported by other people. And so really the focus in that one is to play the charm, to play what it is that breaks down people's defenses about him, why people trust him so much, and then the fact that he betrays that. And when you see those moments, I guess, when he turns and he betrays people's trust. But really the focus for me was in getting the charm, because then it makes the other part all that much more scary. I'm not really sure if I answered your question, but I'm sure I answered something. Yeah, no worries. I just flew out from New York, and I forgot my driver's license in New York, and so I ended up flying without my ID. And I accomplished this by, when I got to the front of the line, the TSA woman, she looked up at me, and before I even told her I didn't have my ID, I saw the look in her eyes, and I knew that everything was going to be okay. She looked at me like I was about to kidnap her and take her on a 3-day raping spree, and I just said, I'm really sorry, I don't have my ID. She said, it's okay.
Best perk ever. Joe, for your character, I don't think he sees himself as a villain.
No, he does not. And generally speaking, I think that when you play a villain, we've all heard this in acting classes over and over and over again, you can't ever play a negative. So from my standpoint, all villains think they're doing something to make the world a better place, whatever that might be. Whatever their motives are, whatever is operating inside of them, they're making, whether it's their world or the entire world, a better place for people to live in. And so for Rowan, clearly, if it's to protect the Republic or protect his daughter, it's all to make all that a better place for either one of those situations, and try to do it at the same time, obviously.
At the same time, when you get a script, spoiler alert, everyone, is there ever a time when you see it and you're just like, oh, I kill a kid? Like...
Again, I mean, revenge is one of those terrible things. And so from his perspective, he's making his world, you did this to me, so I'm doing this to you, and we're even. And it's just as, for me, it's just as clear as that. It's this makes my world a better place, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I'm sort of cleaning house here.
Well, when you're on a show like The Americans, which is about Soviet spies and they're the hero, the lines are very blurry. And I'm from Miami originally, which is a very conservative Republican town. And you wouldn't think so from like the stories that you hear from your friends, but it is. And so I grew up around a lot of Cuban people that had very, very strong feelings about communism or socialism or anything like that. So playing a Sandinista I just had to kind of put all that aside and try to figure out this woman and her history. And it's funny because I'd actually met a few people from women in Nicaragua. I studied, like I said, international relations in college, and I went to Nicaragua years before, not knowing that I would ever even be an actress or audition to play a Sandinista. And so I met women who would have been Lucia's age in 1982. And I think I understood their pain more than anything else. So forget any political stance. I think it's all about their experience and how that can rock you in such a way that that you feel completely justified in everything that you do. So that's how I felt like I approached Lucia in that way. I had a lot of sympathy for her, I think.
We have a question from Eric for everyone. Are any of you still training in a class or privately with a coach? And with whom and what benefits have you found from classes and coaching?
I mean, I have multiple acting books by my bedside at all times. I actually do, which is kind of sounds dramatic. But I also find that a few of them kind of always, especially when you're working like in this medium, I do a lot more theater. Am I out? Oh, I'm on. I do a lot of theater, so I don't need this mic. Thank you. So you do the same thing 8 times a week, sometimes my last job for a year. So I know the woman, I know the story, I know everybody else's lines, I know my lines, I know everything backwards and forwards. When you're working in television, you know your lines for that day, and then you need to throw them away and learn the lines for the next day. So you're constantly being confronted with the structure and the problem of tackling a scene. What's my objective in this scene today? All right, what's my objective in this episode? I have just learned, I've always wanted to know what's my objective in the season, but we work in the same way. We don't know what the next script is, so I can't do that. But I can look at each episode as a play and tackle it in that way. So I find some of my favorite books to be very helpful. I also still coach, and anytime I can take a class, it's hard to take a class because I believe if you're in a class, then you're with those people and you share that experience together and you need to be there every week. So occasionally that's a little bit challenging depending on the schedule, but I still find that it's extremely valuable, and I hope that I never stop learning. You learn in the action of it, but I also think you learn in the quiet time of it. And I still take voice lessons all the time when I'm doing I take a voice lesson like every week when I'm doing a Broadway show.
Anyone else?
Well, I taught at Fordham for 1 semester. And the great thing about that is sort of what you were saying a second ago, which is that when you're teaching, especially when you're teaching college students are like sponges. They want to know everything that you know. And so what I needed to do was try to translate what's now become instinct into something that I could actually articulate in such a way that they could learn it. And what that does for the teacher is it brings you back to the basics. You start thinking, oh, that's right. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it really sort of reinforced a lot of the things that I believed needed to happen in terms of how the name of the course was creating a character. So that's what it was all about. And it was very edifying for me as well as for them. And it was an interesting semester because it taught me as much as I think I taught them.
I love being in a class, especially during the downtime, because so much of, if you live in LA and you're just an auditioning actor, you forget you're an actor sometimes. Maybe you have another job that pays your bills and you just need to feel creative. So I think a class is the best way to do that. And I didn't go to theater school, so I love going to classes that focus on, like maybe doing like a scene from Chekhov or something like that, because a lot of the classes out here I find are kind of like, well, here's how to say 2 lines for this, audition, which is very helpful. You need to know how to do that. But I think once you've done a little bit of that, you kind of want to get into the meatier stuff. So I do it to kind of remind me that I'm an actor too.
I highly recommend Jack Plotnick. He's an actor, but he has a website, jackplotnick.com. I don't know if you guys have ever worked with him. He gives these audition workshops, and he's coached me, and he's a friend, but he's also helped me on some auditions and stuff. He really focuses on auditioning and sort of unlocking the vultures that want to peck at us and make us feel inferior and make us feel like we can't do what we're doing. And he is very positive, and he gives you like real specific things to focus on when you're auditioning that help you get through that process in a way that you feel somewhat whole when you leave it, which doesn't happen all the time. So I recommend that. And also sometimes, if I have an audition that I just don't feel like I've got a handle on, I will work with him, or I'll work with my husband, or I'll find somebody who I can just spar with a little bit and sort of just, break it down like an actual scene, as if we're going to go and shoot it, and not, oh, I need to get this job. You kind of release the need to get the job and just try to solve the scene. And so I haven't taken any classes in a while, but I kind of feel like by doing that, or it is similar.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I haven't been able to take a class, and I would love to take a class again. But another thing I would say is, when you are working, I try to stay on set as much as possible and not hole myself up in my trailer, which sometimes if you're working as a guest can be kind of intimidating, because you don't know their process, you don't know a lot of the people, you don't know if it's cool. But you can usually find somebody that seems accessible to talk to and say, is it cool if I just hang out and watch? Because I think you do learn a lot, especially if you're doing a type of show you've never done before, or I did an episode of The Crazy Ones, and I was like, why would I sit in my trailer when I can watch Robin Williams? It's like, I'm gonna, if I can, and it's cool. And he turns out is an amazingly kind and, gentle, soft-spoken person. But if you can, try to watch and not, either be blasé or be intimidated to just say, I'm just gonna hang out and watch how other people work.
I've always been told that it's actually harder to be a guest star than to be a regular on a show, because you're basically showing up for someone else's family dinner.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff for me, it's who am I gonna eat lunch with? Is there gonna be? It's that same thing as being in school, where you're are the people gonna be nice? And it's a good lesson for when you're a regular on a show, to be welcoming as much as you can, because a lot of times it's not that people aren't nice, or it is when you're used to your people and your friends with the crew, you're friends with everybody when you're a regular on a show, so you're just not looking out for somebody. So yeah, I don't know, when I'm a regular on a show, I try to remember, if nothing else, at least if there's guest actors, be please come sit with us at lunch. And I think it's a lot harder to be a guest, just because you don't know any of the moving parts, the people, or how they work, how they like to work. And so you kind of just have to be on your toes and not get in the way, and be as, ready and as like friendly and kind as you possibly can be and make things easy for everybody.
Pablo kind of addressed this earlier, but you are all on shows that have very passionate followings. I'm curious, Carrie's on 4 of them, actually. I'm curious, what are you most often recognized for, and have there been any odd fan encounters, or are people, like Joe, do people cross the street to get away from you, or are they pretty...
It's interesting. I mean, for the longest time, I guess I got recognized for Terminator 2, right?
For destroying the world.
But, well, not for destroying, for dying, actually. Everyone says, "Oh, you're that guy," and that was it. That was it. And for people who might be older than that, it was Brother from Another Planet, it's still my favorite film. But this has been very different. Scandal has been a very different experience. It's a hugely popular show. The character has become enormously popular. And what seems to happen is I walk in and nobody believes it's me for the first however long. And then eventually people start coming up and there's a lot of interaction. And everyone says the same thing. I really was nervous. I thought you might be, you might, kind of like what your experience was in the airport. They think you're going to do something to them, and they're very relieved when you don't. So it's been fun.
Somebody came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, your Russian accent was impeccable." And I'm like, "Well, it was Nicaraguan." But thank you. Yeah. So once they get over like, oh, she's not Selena Gomez, she must be the girl with the Russian accent from The Americans. Yeah, that happened. And also was referred to the poor man's Mila Kunis too, which I'll take it. Hey guys, no, that's a compliment. I will take that.
That's still pretty good.
That's pretty good. I'll take anything.
I feel your pain when somebody compliments you on your accent that is not an accent that you do on the show that you're on. I chose a very, very specific accent that hails from Gurnee, Illinois, which is like a hybrid of Chicago and Kenosha, Wisconsin. My husband is from Gurnee. I basically just pretend to be his mother when I do my accent on our show. And when I can't figure out how to say something, I call him and I say, "How would your mom say this?" And then he says it and I do it. But often people are like, "I love your Brooklyn accent." That's not it at all. It's so much work.
You do. You just have to say thank you.
You just say thank you because you don't want to make them feel bad. It's awkward. But often people don't know that I was on Masters at all because I looked very different to them, which I will take as a compliment because I was a dirty hooker. But for some reason, people don't. They are very, like when I go in for meetings, the casting directors are like, "You look so much younger than you do on the show," which I'm going to just take that as a compliment because that's the only thing to do. But I think it is a compliment to look so different and to feel so different. I will take that as a compliment as an actress.
My first 3 seasons or 4 seasons on True Blood, I was wearing a wig. So I've been I was a blonde up until about 4 years ago. So I was wearing a long red wig, and so no one knew I was on this wildly popular show. And so I sort of walked around incognito, and I would see all my castmates who were, getting mobbed and stuff, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. Nobody. And then I dyed my hair, and then it was like, whoa, okay, now I know what they're, dealing with. But for me, it's fun because people will come up and say, "I love you on the show," and then I'll profile them, because I'll be like, okay, are you a True Blood person or a Good Wife person? And I can usually tell, it's because it's different demographics. And recently, a woman came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I love that episode of Good Wife where you were talking to the anti-Semitic bear. Listen to my ringtone." And it's me on her ringtone going, "I'm not a dirty Jew. I'm not a dirty Jew." I'm like, "That's your ringtone?" Wow. That was weird.
You also have lost fans to deal with because you gave birth to Benjamin Linus.
I gave birth to my husband, yes. My husband is Michael Emerson, who played Benjamin Linus. And when the producers were saying, we should find a something for you to do on the show. And I jokingly said to Michael, wouldn't it be great when they do your flashback if I played your mom? That would be hilarious. Ha, ha, ha. And then like a week later, I'm giving birth to him in the jungle. And so that was, but no, he gets all the crazy Lost fans and stuff. And
That's gonna be me.
yeah. He gets that. Like one time we were in a department store and we were going up an escalator and this woman was coming down and she sees him and just goes, "Ah!" I mean, the entire time Michael's just. So yeah, people are scared of him too.
Yeah, I saw him on the street one time and I was like, ah!
No, and when people see him and he's on their same flight, it's bad.
I actually know someone who was on a flight with him, and she debated getting off.
Yeah, people will tweet, "Oh my God, Ben Linus is on my mind."
Yeah, she totally tweeted. That was
Yep.
That was her. Sarah, for you, it kind of was like an overnight thing where, you know, this one episode airs and you know, the next week it just seems like it was crazy. You were being interviewed by the New York Times and
It was crazy. Yeah, it was very crazy. I mean, for me, even still, I get more like, you look so familiar. Do you know my daughter? And then I'm like, I don't think so. And it's always that thing of, do you let them off the hook and say I'm an actor, or which feels gross, but then sometimes they're really pursuing how they might know you, and you're like, no, it's not that. We've never met, you know. I've also had famous people introduce themselves to me, or like say hello and say like, well, we've met before, and I'm like, no, I would remember meeting you. You're extremely famous. You just don't realize that I am also an actor and you've maybe seen me in something. And I think that's what happens a lot too. I can be in a scenario where like it's all actors and people will be like, you look really familiar. I'm like, yeah, I'm an actor too. Yeah, you might have seen me in something. But yeah, no, I don't usually. I mean, yeah, for Louie, a little bit. But it's also in LA and New York, it feels like Louie's this, you know, really popular show. But I mean, a lot of people don't watch Louie. None of our parents probably watch Louie, you know, so they're, you know, it's that, all that sort of reaction afterwards was crazy, but in terms of on the street, I've had maybe 3 people come up to me, and they've all been like, you were so wonderful on Louie, and like really intense and sweet and nice about it, because, you know, if she's like a very, whatever, it's the kind of part that you root for the girl, it's, you know, so I don't get like, people aren't scared of me by a long shot.
did they ever, this is for my own use here, did they talk about bringing her back? Can you reveal if she will be back?
No, they did not. Not to me, no. I mean, I don't know what Louie thought, you know, the reaction to the episode was going to be. He did go on a show, because they aired 2 episodes of that show every Monday, and on the episode that aired after mine, that same night was the start of the elevator thing. If you watch the show with Aimee, who he did end up having a relationship with over the course of a few episodes. So he went on some shows and said like, oh yeah, the episode that airs tonight starts like a 5-part series. So then I had a lot of people that were like, but you guys, no, it's okay because they're gonna be together. She's gonna be on more episodes. And I had to be like, oh no, that's not me. That's somebody, that's the next lady he meets. So yeah.
What about, I mean, career-wise, did things change for you? Did you start getting, you know, calls or into rooms you couldn't get into before?
I mean, my experience is that it's not that immediate. I mean, I think unless you're in something like that and somebody happens to be looking for somebody just like you and calls you in the next day, and that does happen sometimes where it's just perfect timing for something. But I mean, you know, no. Hopefully, you know, it will. I mean, I think, you know, this is so gross. Good things will happen. Don't worry about me, guys. That'll be fine. No, but I don't think it's that immediate, you know. It's like it's really just been a couple of weeks since it aired. So I think, do I sound sad now? Like, they're gonna call. Yeah. Probably got tons of texts right now. Steven Spielberg.
We have a lot of questions actually about getting agents. Eileen wants to know, how did you get your first agent, and do you have the same agent now?
I do. I think I always say, if whatever your path is, then you think that's the path everybody should take because it worked for you. For me, I was like sneaky and like submitting myself for stuff because I didn't have an agent, and then I actually got called in. It was one of those like they were recasting something on a pilot, so they went through the stack of random people headshots, and I had like I'd been taking groundlings classes and stuff, so and I had worked a little bit, and they called me in, Colin Daniel and Brett Greenstein, and then it just happened to be that I could actually, I could do the part, but they didn't. I mean, nobody knew me. I didn't have an agent. So it ended up being this really fast thing where they were like, can you come back tomorrow, read with the lead actor? It was for a pilot. And then it just and then by the end of the week, they were like, you're going to test for this. You don't have an agent, right? And I said, no. They're like, well, this is a really good way for you to get one.
Yeah.
And they were really nice. And he was like, if you have somebody, fine. But if not, I can call some people for you. So they like called some agents for me. We're like, we've got this girl testing for this role. She doesn't have an agent. I met with like 5 people. You go from like persona non grata 1 week to the next week meeting with 5 people. And it can happen. It happened to me. So it happens. But you're also like, you wouldn't have met me last week. But okay. But thanks for meeting with me this week. And then, and I met my agent Joel King through that and was like, okay, I think this is the guy for me. And now I've stayed with him. And I have managers now too, but I've stayed with the same agent.
I left school after 3 years, and I left school because of what may be obvious to some people and not to other people. I was sort of the only black guy in the drama department, so I couldn't get a part for any number of different reasons. And I finally said, screw this, if I have to get this kind of punishment, I'd rather get paid for it. So the last time that happened, the teacher who was directing it was a guy named Joe Leon, who was an actor, a professional actor, who was sort of coming in to teach us what it would really be like in the real world, and he was going to do the Brendan Behan's The Hostage, and I thought, see, now I can do The Hostage. He's not making love to anybody and doesn't belong. He's not Irish, he's English, and he's by himself, blah, blah, blah. No, he said, you can't do this part either because, no pun intended, but it will color the play. So I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm out of here, I'm leaving school. So he actually called an agent, and because he was really upset about it, and he called an agent and he said, I want you to go in and just tell this guy that, call him up and tell him that you're my friend. So I got on the phone, called this guy on the phone. I said, my name is Joe Morton. Joe Leon told me to call you. And he said, fine, come in on a Wednesday, whatever it was. So it was CMA, and I went to CMA, Madison Avenue, and I walked up to the receptionist desk, and I said, my name is Joe Morton. I'm here to see so-and-so. And she said, are you sure you're in the right place? I said, well, yeah. I looked at my book. Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And she said, and who did you talk to? And I told her the guy's name, and she said, well, he doesn't work here anymore. I said, but I just talked to him on Monday. She said, well, he hasn't worked here for months. I said, well, I talked to somebody and made an appointment with somebody. So she went back to the office, to this guy's office, came back. I went in and I met a man named Ed Blum. It just turns out, we never exchanged names on the phone. It just turns out that he also was a friend of Joe Leon's, and that's why he made the appointment. And so he became my first agent. Stayed with him for a long time, and basically that agency sort of broke up, and I've been with the guy I'm with now for longer than 20 years. But then, there you go.
That's like 80 years in Hollywood time.
That's how old I feel sometimes, yes.
I actually was, my freshman year of college, I went to school in New York, and I was working 4 days a week at the Peninsula Spa and the Peninsula Hotel. And a wonderful woman who was running the membership department, I remember I had gotten a call back. I used to go to every EPA and chorus call that you possibly could go to in New York City. I mean, I went to the Shakespeare ones, I went to the musical ones, I went to the non-musical Shakespeare magic ones, I went to anything you could go to, I went to. And I'd come with my homework and sit in the cold. And I finally got a call back for Hairspray, and I remember it was an open call. It wasn't an equity chorus call, any of that. I remember Jerry Mitchell was the one who ran the open call. And he's the one that gave me my first Broadway show later on, 5 years later. And then he ended up giving me Kinky Boots. I had this like magical relationship with him. But from that callback, when you have a callback or you're going to test or you have something, sometimes it opens the door. And my friend Kelly said, all right, you got a callback. So now I can get you a meeting with an agent. And then, that was kind of my first like step in the water, having somebody to put on the top left corner of your resume, which just makes you feel, like somebody's got your back when you walk in the room.
I got the way that people say never to get an agent, which is I paid to go to, I was in Miami, and taking classes from this weird hybrid, like they were a production company that actually had a few shows in production in Los Angeles, which like never happens. And they also had an education portion. And so they're like, pay this money, come to LA, meet an agent. So I did it. And this agent happened to run a really, great kids agency. And I was 20, but I looked younger. And so she was like, well, I'll send you out on this one audition and see what happens. And I got a call back for it. And so I was represented by her for a while, and then I sort of like grew out of the kids agency thing. So, and then through a friend who booked me on Alvin and the Chipmunks of Squeakquel, she made some phone calls for me after I booked my first series regular job. And it's really funny. I got to meet, really classy agents and at really fancy agencies. And I remember I was working at a restaurant at the time on South Beverly Boulevard Drive, not to be confused with Boulevard. And I met with this really like high-end agent the day before. Then he walked into the restaurant the next day, and I served him. He never even looked up once. And I was like, not so much. No, thank you. So now I'm with Innovative, and they're lovely. So that's my agent story.
I was one of those people who loved school. So I went to undergrad. I went to a couple of different undergrads, and then I went to grad school in New York. And when I was in my third year of grad school, Eric Bogosian came to do a workshop of this play that he had written called Suburbia. And so we did the first production of that play. And his agent came and saw the play, and she sort of said, oh, well, Carrie Preston seems interesting. And he just lied and said, oh, everybody's trying to meet with her. He just lied. And so, of course, then she was like, oh, well, can I get a meeting? And he was like, well, I'll ask her, but, she's got a lie. So I owe it to Eric Bogosian, because then I met with her and ended up going with her, but I've had like 4 different agencies and along the way, but I'm with Innovative too. I'm with them now. I'm very happy with them. I've been with them for a while, but yeah, it's like any relationship. If it starts to get to a place where you're not feeling like there's a good communication or for whatever reason, then you move on, at least in my case. Like some people, like my husband, Mike, always been with the same agent since he started working. So it's just different for each person. Yeah.
I got my first agent from a showcase from Carnegie Mellon. I went to 4 years of school there, and then at the end they do a showcase in New York, and Innovative also was there. Meredith Wechter was the person at the time who saw my showcase and asked me to come in, and I met with her. I think I had 3 other agencies that had asked to meet with me, and I met with them, and they ended up being the people that I responded to. I've since left that because she left the company, so she was the person who had signed me originally, and once she was gone, I didn't have that relationship, so I was kind of in limbo there for about a year without really attaching to anybody. And then I got nominated for Tony for Awake and Sing, and when that happened, I kind of had access to another pool. So I took another round of meetings and ended up signing with Bonnie Bernstein, who was at Endeavor at that time. Then it got swallowed up by WME. Then they fired her, so I followed her to ICM. So I've been with her ever since 2005. But yeah, getting an agent is like, that's the thing, man. It's crazy. it's graduating from acting school and watching that process of who gets an agent, who gets picked up, and who doesn't is really heartbreaking. And then trying to figure out how to tell people to get an agent when you didn't do anything to do it except for you did a mile and somebody happened to pick you up, and it's it seems to be such a game breaker, deal changer, whatever. And I've always struggled with how to answer that question. How do you get an agent? Because I don't really. And
it's so much different now. I mean, I feel like a really old person on this panel. But it's so much different than it was. I mean, when I started, you could actually go to an agent's office, you could walk in the door, you could show them your resume, you sit down, and they would read something, and you could do that for a number of people. Then it turned into just slide your picture and resume under the door, and there was a pile somewhere that somebody would go through, and hopefully you'd get a call. My son is an actor, and now they do these showcases at the end of your school year, and the agents sort of come in and they start picking people up, and it really is that old thing of grabbing and throwing it against the wall to see what sticks, and if it doesn't stick, then they kind of don't work for you, and it's a very, very different kind of pursuit than it used to be. It's far more corporate now than it ever was before. Less about supporting talent and more about who's commercially suited for what. It's very frustrating.
I actually, too, going back to the showcase, I told you the story about working with my first agent, but I didn't actually sign with that agent. I freelanced with them, which meant occasionally they would just help me if I got a call back, so that's a whole other level of being with an agent. It's not really being with an agent, but it's having somebody at least to put on your resume. When we had our showcase my senior year, I didn't get one bite. So I kept going to those EPAs and I kept going to those course calls, and that's what kept me going. And for me, that's always been kind of the backbone reminder that it's about the intention and it's about the work. And if you just keep thinking about that, all of those other things that are part of the business, they will fall in line. And your agent, hopefully at a point in your career, isn't just a part of your business. They're one of your partners, and they help you forge your life and help you forge your creativity. But you just have to keep plugging away, because sometimes they come around in the most unexpected ways.
But we're also in a world right now where it's very conducive to creating your own work. And I'm a big believer in that. I have a production company. I've been directing and producing for over 10 years now. And, when I'm not actively involved in an acting gig, I'll shoot a web series or something like that just to keep the creative juices flowing. And I feel like a lot of agents now also are trafficking in the internet world. And if you have a group of people that you love working with, if you write, if you have some story that you want to tell, there's ways to do it in short form, and you cut it in your own computer and you can get your own work out there. You can be really proactive with your career and not wait for other people to tell you it's okay to do what you know how to do.
I want to thank everyone for being here, and especially Joe, who I understand you flew in from New York just for this. That's so generous. Yes. And I want to make sure everyone gets home tonight in time to see Pablo on Jimmy Kimmel. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for being a great audience.